Many of us have mixed reactions when we're assigned to a group. Our reactions may stem from uncertainty or anxiety, especially when members do not know each other or we don't know much about the purpose of the group. But if we know someone in the group, we will most likely hang out with that person and eventually become comfortable with the group. Groups can be voluntary, like you can choose your own group mates or form a small group of friends. Or groups can be involuntary, like when your teacher assigns you for a class activity. This may affect our interactions with the group. In this lecture video, we will discuss what comprises a small group, the stages of a small group, types of small groups, culture and power in small groups, and membership and leadership in small groups. So let's begin by defining a small group. According to Joseph DeVito, a small group is a collection of individuals who are connected to one another by some common purpose, are interdependent, have some degree of organization among them, and see themselves as a group. From this definition, we can see that groups should appreciate diversity. We are still individuals with different perspectives and views, and groups are meant to serve a common purpose for harmony rather than just unity. However, teams are also different from groups. A team is also a small group, but it is made for a specific task and members have their own specific roles. Knowing the nature of small groups or teams may help us be more confident as a group member, but we also need to know the advantages and disadvantages of groups. One advantage is that small groups bring different perspectives, resources, and knowledge to an issue or topic. We may learn something with only ourselves as individuals, but we learn more and make learning more meaningful when we are in a community. This is the advantage of groups. They are good learning environments with each others and we learn from others. But even if we learn a lot from groups, learning and other group activities can be time consuming. Another disadvantage can be groupthink, or that members may feel the pressure to agree with the majority or with the leader and not voice any disagreements or alternative options. However, these disadvantages can be compensated with proper moderation, effective communication, and effective leadership. We say that groups are formed for a common purpose. Thus, we can categorize groups based on their purpose. Primary groups are formed to help us meet our fundamental needs such as inclusion and affection. These groups can be our family or close friends or other relationships or groups that meet on a regular basis. Secondary groups are formed to accomplish a task or solve problems or make decisions. Activity groups are formed to participate in various activities. These activities can be hobbies or a particular sport. Personal growth groups are also formed to create a support group or a feedback group for those who seek help or community, as well as to grow as a person. Examples of these are spiritual groups, or what Christians call cell groups or growth groups. Another example are therapy groups. There are also learning groups which are focused on helping the group learn new knowledge from a particular topic. There are also problem-solving groups which are tasked to solve a specific problem. A famous example of a problem-solving group is the one tasked to help Apollo 13 go back to Earth after a failed mission to land on the moon. These types of groups are important so that we would be able to know the general purpose of the group in which we belong. To know more about group dynamics, we look at the stages of a typical small group. The first stage is the opening stage, where members get acquainted with each other and engage in social small talk. As members start to get to know each other, there's usually a feed-forward stage in which members attempt to identify what needs to be done, who will do it, and so on. The stage can sometimes be formal, where the agenda of the meeting or a group has been set. It can also be informal, where members introduce topics of conversation or stating informally what members should do. After the feed-forward stage comes the business stage or the problem-solving stage, where the actual work of the task or agenda is being done and information is being shared by different members of the group. Once more information is shared or tasks are being done, Members will reflect on what was done or evaluate what has happened to the group. In the feedback stage, members will suggest points on how to improve the group. After members evaluate and improve the group members in the closing stage will go back to their individual ways and adjourn the group. However, some groups last for a long time as members develop a lifelong relationship with each other and show continuous commitment to the group's purpose or update or change their purposes. The stages of a small group may seem a bit formal to you, but we need to take note that these stages can happen simultaneously, and there is no actual or specific timeline for groups. But one of the most important things that happen in small groups is to create a group culture. Group culture is understood mainly by group members. It can also be understood by those outside of the group, but it will take some time. Group culture is important because it shows cohesiveness to the group, and those who know the group culture are those who can be identified with the group. One characteristic of a group culture is having group norms. These norms are rules or standards of behavior identifying which behaviors are considered appropriate and which are considered inappropriate. Norms can be explicit or implicit. In other words, norms are created by continuous interaction and communication. The more you communicate, the more you build relationships, set expectations, and make ways to create order or regulation in the group. Norms also set role expectations, which regulate a group member's behavior, identify a member's role or task, and monitors if the member is fulfilling the expectations set by the group. Norms also set the cohesiveness of the group, or when members are closely connected with each other, and they depend on one another to meet their needs for the sake of the success of the group. Norms are a basis on how long you will stay with the group. You're more likely to accept the norms of your group's culture when you feel your group's membership is important and want to continue your membership in the group. Those who identify with the group understand the norms and culture of the group and subscribe or commit with those norms and culture can be members of the group. Membership in groups can also be in terms of roles, responsibilities, or contributions, or principles. Members are also either assigned to a role or they assume the role they want for the group. This also shows the group dynamics and the nature of the group. There are also two types of roles in the group. Group task roles are those that help the group focus more specifically on achieving its goals, while individual roles hinder the group's productivity and member satisfaction because they focus on serving individual needs rather than group needs. Aside from norms and culture, another key characteristic of small groups is to create power relations. Power permeates small groups as well as relationships. It influences what you do, when, and with whom. It influences the employment you seek and the employment you get. It influences the friends you choose and don't choose, and those who choose you and those who don't. It influences your romantic and family relationships, their success, failure, and level of satisfaction. There are 6 types of power that we will discuss in this lecture: legitimate power, referent power, reward power, coercive power, expert power, and information power. These types of power will help us understand that influence in our groups in different forms or characteristics. These types of power will also help us understand power dynamics in groups and also in other relationships. Legitimate power means that we have the right by virtue to influence the behavior of others. Having a legitimate power are most often found in involuntary groups. Examples of those who have legitimate power are parents and religious leaders. Referent power means that your influence is shown by liking. In other words, you are well liked and respected by your members and members who wish to have similar attitudes or experiences with you or to be identified with you. Reward power means that you have the ability to give rewards to your members, and one advantage of having this power is to increase attractiveness in your group. Coercive power also go hand in hand with reward power. Because when you give rewards, you usually have the ability to take rewards or administer punishment to members. Expert power means that you have the expertise or knowledge the group needs to carry out their purpose. It could also mean that you are most likely to be seen as unbiased. Sometimes having an expert power may also show that you have information power. This means that you have the power to persuade or communicate with logic and credibility. These types of power shows us that some types go hand in hand with each other. It also shows that someone may possess two or more types of power. It doesn't mean that the person is more powerful, but it just shows how a leader exhibits their power and what behaviors are accepted in the group. Power is also associated with the leaders of the group. When we define leadership, it can be the process of influencing the thoughts, feelings, and behaviors of group members and establishing the direction that others follow, or the process of empowering others. So the leader is the person who helps others to maximize their potential and to take control of their lives. In other words, leaders are important in groups because they maintain or initiate group interaction, facilitate in fulfilling the group agenda, and ensure that members are satisfied with their groups. We often think that leaders are rare or that leaders are born and that leaders are charismatic. But in fact, anyone can be a leader, and personality is not a requirement of leadership. There are many theories and perspectives that show the types of leadership, but in this lecture video, we will talk about the full range theory of leadership, where we categorize leadership into three types: laissez-faire leadership, transactional leadership, and transformational leadership. Laissez-faire leaders are also called passive avoidant leaders because of their unconcerned and procrastinated qualities. They usually do not interact with their members nor take care of the needs of them. Transactional leaders engage with their members through rewards, praises, and promises in exchange for the achievement of the desired goals to satisfy the immediate needs of the members. Transformational leaders, on the other hand, emphasize their members' intrinsic motivation and personal development, and they are able to foster the commitment of their subordinates to the group and inspire them to exceed their expected performance. Transformational leaders possess qualities such as idealized influence, inspirational motivation, intellectual simulation, and individualized consideration, while transactional leaders possess qualities such as contingent rewards and management by exception. These types of leadership can be used by leaders depending on the situation and culture of the group. The culture in which people are raised, for example, whether in individualist or collectivist cultures, will greatly influence the ways in which members and leaders interact in small groups. For this part, I will talk about ways on how to be an effective group member. To improve your communication and participation with your group, you must be group or team-oriented and be critically open-minded. You must also center conflict on issues rather on personalities, as personalities always affect how people decide in a group. We must also ensure understanding within the group. Sometimes our opinions may differ from each other, but we need to ensure that all should be informed with the right information and that we need to remember that our goal is to create harmony as we acknowledge that we have different perspectives from an objective information. And finally, we need to be aware and address groupthink in the group. Groupthink is a way of thinking that people use when agreement among members has become excessively important. Groupthink is most likely to occur when there is high stress, when like-minded individuals are isolated from others, and when there is an especially strong and opinionated leader. Overemphasis on agreement among members tends to shut out realistic and logical analysis of a problem or of possible alternatives. We often see groupthink when there is avoidance, intolerance of differences of opinion, censorship, gatekeeping, and peer pressure. To address groupthink, we need to create and ensure an open space for members to freely speak their opinions and doubts regarding the decisions of the group. Rewards may also be helpful to this. When members are encouraged to speak their perspectives and are allowed to give a different or an alternative opinion, we may be able to avoid groupthink and make our group a productive community. Our goal for our groups is to make them a safe and open space for us, whatever purpose our groups might be. I hope learning group dynamics and group culture will help us be a better communicator and participants in our groups, whether they are assigned to us or whether we joined or formed them.